What's up, Instagram Live? This is Jay coming at you from my humble abode in Warrington. I've wanted to do this video for a while, and not putting it off, but just it's stuff. Obviously, shit happens and stuff takes priority, and there's been a lot of other things that have been more important than getting my mug on Instagram Live. But for whatever reason, on this sunny Sunday, take a look. Can I flip it? Yes, I can. Yeah, look, gorgeous. If you were following my Instagram story, you've seen that I've been out and about today, taking in a bit of nature and all that kind of stuff. And who knows, maybe it's the weather or that Sunday feeling, which is normally negative. But this is good because I'm feeling positive at the tail end of this Sunday. And anyway, I digress, because what I wanted to share with you was a list, something that's really helped me personally, kind of mentally and emotionally. And I'll show you my list here. I can't take credit for this. I can't remember where I actually found this. I think it was just one of those like positive quote sort of pictures or something like that, that I caught off on one of the social media platforms, whatever it was. Not really important, is it? But there you go. Anyway, I saw that and I thought, wow, I think this is so useful, because one of the things I think, well, at least me personally, but I'm sure a lot of you can relate to, is that sense of kind of, I suppose, the inherent uncertainty in life. And I know it personally as well, is that I feel like with recent events that I've been, that level of uncertainty and the kind of anxiety that comes with it has been like, whoa, like way up here. And there's obviously, there are, I think, sometimes, in my opinion anyway, we go the wrong direction in trying to, respond to that by taking control or trying to take control over things, which in reality, a lot of times we just don't have control over by nature of them. So rather than do that and kind of get more frustrated, what I started to kind of turn my attention to was thinking about the really simple things in life that I always have control over, regardless of, what state I'm in or anything like that. So let's go through these one by one together, and I'll give you my little 2 cents on each of them, or at least my personal experience of late. So number one is my beliefs. And I think, the beliefs start to create the lens through which we see the world. And you can certainly, I'm sure you've got your own experiences of this, or people whose beliefs can either cast a really dire picture of what's going on, or the opposite being true, and that even in adverse times or circumstances, that their beliefs enable them to kind of sail through situations, really help empower them to get through tough times. So that's the first one. And then my attitude. I think that's sort of along similar lines, really. And I don't think, I'm not a fan of like just being a positive Polly and just trying to paint a positive picture on everything. I mean, don't you get, I know a lot of people are going to be like, what WTF, Jay? Come on, man. Like, just be positive about, you should be positive about everything. Honestly, I think that, I think that, in my experience, that when you kind of try to be overly positive, when shit has genuinely gone down that you just feel effing shit about, and you kind of almost deny yourself or guilt or feel guilty for feeling bad about stuff, it might, from my perspective, that only makes things more difficult. So I think when it comes to, you know, attitude, it's like I see it as trying to not. It's not that you're not acknowledging. I think it was Tony Robbins that said it's like it's not pretending there aren't any weeds, but it's acknowledging them and then doing something to start pulling them out and uprooting them. So anyway, that's that. Yeah, perspective. So that's something massive, isn't it? Hey Kate, how you doing? Yeah, perspective. Oh, what have I done? Oh no, it's okay, fine, it's all good. This is the first time I've done this, so just bear with me, just give me a break, guys, okay? Perspective, yeah, so, what was that example? Oh, right, yeah, so, here's perfect, so like looking through the window here, and obviously beautiful day, quite easy to be positive on a beautiful day, but I don't know if you can see this, but you know, no you can't, but if you zoom in, there's a lot of specks on this window, and example I heard one time that I think, you know, articulates this pretty well, is that you can be that person who looks through the window at the beautiful sunny sky or the beautiful sunset or whatever it may be, or you can be the person complaining about the specks on the window. And yes, both people are correct, like both of those things are there, but it just depends on what you choose to turn your attention to. You know, another sort of example of that is like depending on, you know, what pair of glasses you choose, metaphorical glasses you choose to wear will ultimately sort of dictate what perception you have of the world, and that's either going to be, you know, a positive one, a negative one, and that's obviously a huge spectrum and everything in between. So anyway, that's another really important one. Who my friends are, who I surround myself with, huge, right? Because we all know we've got those, you know, there are sometimes people who again find the worst in everything, and some people that inspire us, uplift us, motivate us, you know, make us remind us of what's special about ourselves and all the rest of it. And I think that's one thing that I've always admired and really been attracted to when it comes to training in CrossFit gyms, because the community and the camaraderie and the people I've met, many of which who, you know, even from years ago when I started, I've remained really close, some of my closest friends, some really just downright amazing people who have really helped me throughout life, and I really feel like bring the best out of me, and I try to do the same for them. So that's that one. And the music I listen to, man, have I been guilty of this? And I don't know. I don't know what you guys think about this, but sometimes I think you know, if you're feeling, you know, a bit down the dumps, and sometimes kind of like listening to a bit more. I'm trying to think of the words to describe it. Should we just go with sort of sadder type music? There can be some comfort to that, I think, but overall, indulging in that too much, I think there's a risk of sending you into more of a negative spiral. So it is obviously something that you absolutely have control over, and it's a powerful, you know, music is a powerful influence, big time. Either way, you know, when you think about going to see a movie, the soundtrack massively influences how you feel about that scene, like depending on, you know, what track they use. You know, you watch the same scene without the soundtrack, and, you know, a lot of the times that the emotions that would have been evoked are absent. So really huge, and really something I think that's overlooked a lot of the time. So I've just been trying to make a point of, you know, like on my Spotify playlist, being a bit disciplined with the sounds that are going through my ears and making sure they're ones that kind of tend to make me feel better rather than shitty. All right, so what I read, same sort of deal. What do I compare all this stuff to is that I think most people are, very aware that, what we put into our mouths and kind of we are what we eat, and all that kind of stuff. And so this is kind of like almost like that kind of emotional nutrition, so to speak, if I can use that expression. So that, the content that you read, and we can bash through the next two here. One of them is what I eat. The other one is what I watch. Or we could just summarise under the same umbrella. In that basically, like, that you're the through whichever medium it may be, all those things are going to have a cumulative effect, and I think it's also something that I think, because almost like negativity sells. I was speaking to somebody about this the other day. Is that all this stuff you tend to find, in the news, whether that's on television or in the newspaper and stuff, is there's a huge amount of bias on events towards the kind of the catastrophizing or the negative side of it, and that might not seem like something that you'd immediately kind of pick up on to be having an effect on you, and I think that's the thing, is that it's almost like smoking, in the sense that no, it's not, you're not going to drop down dead or suddenly have an adverse reaction necessary to it immediately. But I think that if over time that we're consistently just intaking all of that negativity, it builds up. It builds up a sense of stress, and it always is kind of turning our perspective towards everything that's wrong in the world. I'm not saying you shouldn't acknowledge or be aware of those things, but it's skirting that line of just not constantly just filling yourself with everything that's wrong, and again, to use a Tony Robbins quote, it's like, what's wrong is always available, but so is what's right. Anyway, so what I eat, I'm really proud of this one, actually, because I started off, some of you might have seen an Instagram post I did not so long ago, I think it was a couple of months now, where I'd done a 30-day challenge, trying to eat really clean. And especially tough, actually, because it was a time where I was so massively tempted just to chuck that diet completely out the window and just eat a bunch of crap and like eat my problems away or whatever. I think it was just after sort of Easter time that I really kind of made a focused effort to get clean. And after that 30 days, it didn't even, at that point, it didn't feel like I felt so good off it that I thought I'm just going to keep going. And at that point, I wasn't sort of tracking it. But I've now gone 90 days and I haven't touched anything even remotely bad. And I feel great. My eczema, I used to have some really bad eczema. It's really... it's the best it's ever been, so that's great. The meaning I give events, so that whole cheesy phrase, like the meaning dictates the feeling. Whether you choose to see something is this the beginning or is the end? Is this an opportunity or a challenge or a problem, etc., etc. Hugely powerful. I massively, I think, simple tactic that's really untapped, in that we can't, and especially, in that we can't control the events that happen to us, as shit as they might be, but we can choose the meaning we give them. Now, I'm reading all these things, and I will be the first to tell you that I have not mastered these. I am better at some than others, but I am far from a master at these, some days I'm better at them than others, and don't get me wrong, like, it's easy for me to say, oh yeah, great, Jay, just give a really empowering, positive meaning to stuff that happens, but you don't know what's happened to me. Like, this has happened, that has happened, and I'm sure you guys have had an immense amount of crap and really difficult, arduous, stressful situations that have happened to you in multiple areas in your life. So I know it's definitely not easy, But it's something that I think if you you've got to just be aware of that you can choose that, because I think a lot of times that there's a lack of awareness to think that you could even define a different meaning for yourself in the face of a situation, and it's not easy. I think by default is that we always slip into doing the negative. So yes, it takes more effort, but I would always encourage people to try and make that choice. And even if you make it and then you feel like you're slipping back into a negative meaning, it's just keep continuously, like rep after rep. Like lifting heavy and getting strong is difficult. You've got to overcome resistance, and it's tough. But rep after rep, set after set, is that you will get stronger. And I think doing these things is much like a muscle, is that it's not easy to begin with, but the more you rep it out, the better you get at it. The next one, how kind I am to myself and others. Always found this easy with others, always found it difficult with myself. And this is the one that I'm kind of working on, and the phrase like treat yourself like you would a best friend and all the rest of it. And this is something I won't go into too much detail now, but it's something that what was that other phrase? Something along the lines of if you treated your friends like yourself, would you have any? And if the answer is no, you might need to put some work into that one. And it's something that's a huge game changer, I think. And again, not something I'm a master at, but I'm definitely getting better. Speaking my heart, that's something I never. I've always been given this advice by various friends and stuff, and it's something that I think, regardless of what I think people's reactions might be, it's something that will. I think is one of those keys to never living a life of regret. I think potentially one of the biggest sources of regret is not saying like what's in your heart, but when you do, I think that provided that it genuinely is coming from a good place, regardless of how people react to that, I think it's always something that will leave you feeling better about life. Okay, what else we got? Asking for help. I think that's a sign of a lot of maturity. Trying to pretend that you can do everything yourself is just BS. Not that I'm trying to say that you should just try and offload or delegate everything you need to do to everyone else. No, but I think it's a powerful thing and a mature thing, and an essential thing if you really want to kind of excel in life to reach out to people and ask for help. And again, it's something that you won't regret. I'm running out of battery here, so I better be quick. Again, I think if you've ever read the Chimp Paradox, it talks about, and if you haven't, I would read it because it is a really great book. But our chimp is our responsibility, and we can kind of just let the chimp take over and just end up unleashing our anger and our frustration or our sadness or whatever any which way. But it's up to us to kind of decide how we're going to convey our feelings, both kind of to ourselves and others, in a more productive way, shall we say. Again, not a master of that at all. I think we've all been there, and I think it's always definitely better out. Hey Chris, how you doing, man? I think it's always better out than in. But I mean, come on, like guys, we're always going to slip up sometimes, and you don't need to berate yourself or judge yourself for that. But I think that sometimes just counting to 10 before you say shit can be helpful. How many times I smile? Yeah, there we go. I smiled lots today, actually. It's been a good day. Honestly, I don't know. I'm kind of a bit on the fence sometimes about the whole fake it till you make it thing. I don't know if I'm a huge believer in that, but I do think that sometimes, even if you don't feel good, like smiling at someone can actually really make somebody else's day. And then if you see them kind of get happy, or a little moment of happiness from you smiling, you feel better as well. So I think that's a useful little quick tip. The amount of effort I put in, how hard I work, that's huge. This is one that of all of these that I probably find easier than the others. I think that, you know, if you want to get better at something or improve in an area, you've got to put the work in. You've got to put the time in. That phrase, that expression, what is it? Like, if you're committed to something, you do whatever it takes. You know, you'll stay up late at night, early in the morning, put in those extra hours, sacrifice as other stuff you're doing in your social life, whatever. If you're interested in something, you do what's convenient. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no right or wrong. But I don't believe, like, if you want to get better at something and you complain because, oh, I'm not better at it, well, how often, how much effort you're putting in? Well, nothing or not a lot. Then, you know, you've got to take massive action and just decide what's important to you and then get on it. How much time I spend worrying? Definitely not good at this one. But one thing that did help me is that if don't worry, I'll be back at Lee, man. Don't worry, I'll catch you another time. One thing I thought was, like, what's the positive intent behind worrying? Like, because usually when I worry, it's actually as a means of trying to be prepared for things as possible. Whereas in reality, it just does the complete opposite. So I thought, well, instead of like worrying, why not just cut out the worrying bit and just do what you know helps to kind of get you prepped up as much as possible for whatever the situation is. And no, it doesn't make it disappear, but it certainly made it easier. I tend to worry about things like that less now. Gratitude, huge. Kate, if you're still on here, you are a massive inspiration to me on that front, because it's easy to kind of like be, oh yeah, I'll be grateful for a day, and then you do it, and then you just go back to being ungrateful. And Kate is someone who was like consistently on a Facebook album, was putting out gratitude posts and photos all the time on such a regular basis and keeping it up, and I just love that. I was so inspired by that. And I'm actually, a Facebook memory popped up, and I'd done this gratitude journey for, I think it was in 2015, so a couple of years ago. I'm thinking of doing another one again now. It's something I just try to routinely remind myself and imprint in my mind moments that, you know, that I'm truly grateful for. I think it's very directly related to your level of happiness. How many risks I take? I think the important thing to remember is that when you're faced with a potential, like a decision or an action, and you're worried about what's the risk of me doing it, remind yourself what the risks are if you don't do it, because that's the side that I think is always underestimated, or you don't even kind of consider that, is that there is a risk to inaction as well. And once you've got action, when it comes down to then comparing those two, rather than just being, oh, what's all the risks associated with taking this action, when you can actually see, like, what am I gonna potentially miss if I don't do this? And also, I think we tend to overestimate what could go wrong, tend to not particularly take into account, like, all the benefits, all the things that could go well, what could happen if it goes right. And I think when you look at things that way, you get much more balance, but a much more balanced perspective. When you do that, how often I think about the past, how often I think about my past, I should say. I never do that, so I'm total boss at that. Yeah, this one is tough. This one's really hard. I have to try and, like, when it does happen, I have to try and stay out of situations kind of like rather than reactively. I think once you're in that spiral, it's really tough to get out of. So I try and just stay out of situations or patterns that I know tend to kind of like send me down that spiral, or stay out of triggers that tend to take me back there. Not always possible. I get this a lot, especially with stuff that's happened recently. But I try to then, one of the things I helped, one of my my dad told me was, or asked me, he said, can you picture a future in which you're happy? And even I was feeling awful at the time, when I pictured a future that I would be happy in, I started to feel better straight away, because I could visualize that. And what I do with my pain. Now, a lot of times I think I'd love to, I care about people massively, and my first sort of instinct is that I want to spare people from pain. but actually, it's like, yes, I want to spare them from the painful experience, but I wouldn't want to deprive them of the lessons and the benefits that actually come from pain, because there are a lot, and it's something that can definitely, if it gets out of hand, destroy you. But it's also something that, depending on on how you use it, it can be a huge motivator for change and positive change. It can be a massive driver that will propel you to do things that a lot of times, it's a other emotions might not have necessarily the kind of the same level of drive behind them to actually help you achieve the things you want to. So I think that's something that we always try and escape pain and try and avoid it and all the rest of that stuff, but try and see it for the fuel that it is. Try and use it as fuel to help you achieve the things that you want, to instigate positive change in your life, rather than kind of it turning it in on yourself, and letting it kind of consume you. Again, I'm certainly not saying this like, oh yeah, well I never do that and I always just use it as positivity. No, not at all. It's definitely, as I'm sure all you guys can relate to, that it's definitely got better of me. I've definitely spent a lot of time consumed by pain, all that kind of stuff, but I'm always trying to take a step back and use it as a motivator, use it as a fuel to drive me to where I want to be, rather than taking me to a place that I don't want to be. Anyway, I'm pretty much out of battery, so I hope you found that useful, guys. If you did, and you found it benefit, or and I honestly mean this, if you got stuff that's come up in your life, or you related to anything or resonated with you, and you just want to chat, please feel more than free to just drop me a message on here. I'm more than happy to chat to you. All right, have a great Sunday, guys. Peace.